My question always was, how do you know when you're on the right path? How do you know when what you're doing is what you were meant to do? So I found myself about 15 years ago at the top of my ladder, career-wise, against the wrong wall. I don't know whether any of you have had that experience or not, but it's terrifying because everybody around you is very happy with what you're doing. You're making decent money, you know, your life seems to be perfect, then what's wrong with you? Rather than maybe you aren't fulfilling the most that you can be. Where I found out where to go next is in an interesting place that I used to go and do some work, which is palliative care. And that's people in hospice who are dying. They don't have a lot of time left. And we used to collect their stories so that they could be passed on to the family or even to remain in the hospice. And I was talking one day to a young man who was dying of leukemia, and he had finished telling me some of the things that he regretted that he hadn't done in his life. And he said to me, "Where are you at?" And I said, "Well, I'm not too sure whether I need to change career. I need to do something because it's not right. It just doesn't feel right." And he said, "Well, what are you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, on one hand, I could become a certified financial planner and maybe do some investment brokerage work because I worked with the stock exchanges. But I said, there's this place that I've been looking at that is my other sort of choice where I can go down to the States and do a master's and PhD in mythology." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you want to be a financial planner?" And I said, "No." He said, "Do you want to continue working with the stock exchange?" I said, "No." He said, "Then do the graduate school." So you can imagine how delighted my family and friends were when I said, what I'm going to do is cash in my RRSP and go to school in the States when our dollar was at 62 cents. So my timing wasn't very good with that part. But what did I say, and what was I going to do with this? And the gentleman with leukemia said to me, "Don't worry about what you're going to do with it. You'll be shown where to go next." So that's where I picked up some of my linchpins. The school that I went to was started by a mythologist by the name of Joseph Campbell. You may not know his work. I think the PBS special, The Power of Myth, is still available for us older guys. For the younger audience, where you might know his work is Star Wars. So he was on the set for the first and second movies, and he works with the idea of mentors, the stories that he collected worldwide of the hero's journey. And that really intrigued me. I thought, okay, this is the transformational part that I need, because that's what you're doing, that's what change is you're doing something completely out of what you could possibly think that you could ever do. The other part of the school was Jungian psychology, so I have a sweatshirt that I wear every so often that says "Avoid Freud on one side and Forever Young on the other." But I've been told it's not really professional, so I didn't bring it today. But Jungian psychology is all about creativity. So Jung believed that if we don't find our creative source, that we become neurotic, and that's the cause of all mental illness, is that we step away from our creativity. And finding meaning. So that resonated with me coming out of palliative care, because that's what I heard over and over again, is that people felt their lives had no meaning. And I thought, this is the place for me, but I still didn't know what I was going to do with it. So then out of the blue, based upon the work that I was doing with the hero's journey, I got a call from Michael Ray, who was a professor at Stanford, and he started a program called Creativity in Business, where you look at business, the world that I come from and was running away from, when you look at business as an art form. What happens when you shift? You're thinking towards business as a canvas that you can use to create something new, so that you can use that creative juice. So I was trying to figure out, then I went and joined with a group there where we worked with this program called Creativity in Business that allows you to really think and find what that passion is that you've been looking for. But I was still kind of in the dark. So I went back to my mythology, the books that I was reading, the books that I was studying. Mythology has sometimes been called other people's religion because it's the belief system that drives behavior worldwide. So what is that? And I found this myth that really spoke to me, and we'll see whether it can speak to you. It's about 1,000 years old, and it comes out of the Grail Legend, so it's not Lancelot and Guinevere the heroes. It's kind of the goofy guy at the back, the one with the short pants and the pocket protectors, that kind of knight, as opposed to the hero type. His name was Gawain, and he and the boys were out hunting, and they had caught a lot of game, and they wanted to cook it for their dinner, and they needed water. So one of the guys said, well, there's a well back down the road. I'll go and get some water. So he shows up at the well, and out of nowhere, the nastiest, smelliest, wartiest, ugliest woman he'd ever seen in his life jumped out and said to him, what do you want? And he said, I've come for water, if you please. And she said, water you may have, but first you must kiss me. Well, he ran away. Now, that was repeated quite a few times until finally Gawain said, you guys are all a bunch of losers. I am a knight. I'll handle this. He approaches the well. Same thing. She jumps out at him, what do you want? And he said to her, I've come for water, if you please. And she said, water you may have, but first you must kiss me. And he did. And he did a darn good job. So, as you might then have expected, because it's a myth, she then shapeshifts into the most exquisite beauty he had ever seen. And she said to him, so, you have won me by deed, which was the way of the time. Do you want me to keep this shape for your pleasure at night, and my other shape for your friends to admire during the day? Or my other shape for your pleasure at night, and this shape for your friends to admire during the day? And he said to her, my lady, the choice must be yours, for it is your body. And she said to him, you have not only named my desire, but the desire of any of us to hold the power to choose. Now that myth has driven a lot of the work that I do in stepping into what would that choice be. So going back to the idea of pulling that story map that Campbell mapped out, you can take this and apply it to any movie, any game, any story that captures you. You will find probably that you go through these stages in the map itself. He wrote a book, Hero of a Thousand Faces. There's Star Wars, but this map is in every mythology worldwide, because each mythology carries a value system, a belief system, and if it's still living, it will speak to you. It'll resonate. You'll feel it. It's not an intellectual thing. It resonates in the body. So I was, okay, I've got it. Now what do I do with it? Right? So again, going back to I'm still confused. How do I take this fabulous gift that I've been given and pull it back towards the world that I came from? Well, how story actually works is in just about everything we do in business. So whether it's a branding story, whether it's a strategy story, whether you're working with big data and you can't figure it out, the story will capture the emotion of the change. The story will capture that transformation that you're looking for and maybe give you some guidance as to what to do next. Because if you're anything like me, I was horribly confused. And again, in that spot where your family and friends aren't exactly supportive of maybe you doing something completely different. So if I use that story then and take it forward into whether I'm teaching a class or whether I'm working with an organization or whether I just am modeling my own life for myself, which all of us still have to do, is how do I keep changing the ending of the story? How do I keep adding what's going on with it? We need this in business. It's something that we need desperately right at the moment. We know that in North America. Business as usual is done. Business as usual doesn't work anymore. So to me, the linchpin that I needed to find that to bring back to business was this idea of story. Now, there's been a few comments about being Canadian. And I think that Canada has an entrepreneurial spirit that doesn't come out very often. It definitely came out in the Winter Olympics in Vancouver. It comes out for our sports teams. But it also, I think, lives in each and every Canadian. That if we started to work with what that story is, what that entrepreneurial spirit can do, how would that change our economic condition within Canada itself? To me, we're kind of stuck. This is definitely where I was. I built the box myself. I have no one to blame. But I was definitely pinned in it. So if you're in that circumstance right at the moment and you're feeling constrained, is this all there is? Right? Could there be more for me? Is there some other purpose that I haven't stepped into yet? What would that look like? I would suggest to you, you can find the path, the initial steps, anyway on this journey by asking 3 very simple questions. What do you love to do? What do you want to do more of? And then what resources you need to make that happen. So simply in terms of what do you love to do, how many of you are morning people? You know, you're up at 5, you've painted the house, you've done the laundry, you've cooked all the meals, you get to work. And how many of you then are afternoon people? And how many of all of you go to work at between 8 and 9 a.m.? Yeah. So, productivity, according to the Conference Board of Canada, is falling. We get a D in innovation because we can't execute. I'd suggest that maybe what we need to do is, why are you going to work between 8 and 9? You morning people have wasted 4 hours already running around the house waiting to go to work. And then by noon or 1 o'clock, you're brain dead and you're playing with your email. The afternoon people are brain dead while they're driving to work, play with their email, and then just as they get moving in the afternoon, they're told to go home. And you cause traffic jams, right? So what do you love to do? When you go back to the Grail Legend, when you go back to the myth, the choice must be yours, for it is your body. Your body will tell you where it wants to be productive. So if our companies would just let us pay attention to our own rhythms. So if you're a morning person, go to work at 6, leave at 2. The afternoon person can start at 2 and work until later, and you share 1 parking spot, not 2, and you cut the traffic in half on the roads. Right? It's just so simple as that. If you just took control of your own body and how it works for you. The number 1 criteria in setting a culture that can innovate is giving people the autonomy over their work. Not telling you what to do, not telling you to work from 9 to 5, telling you I need this by this date, and then getting out of your way. Right? So what would shift for you if that was how you were treated at work? We're trying to get organizations to step into that. North America is in last place in the world in a global economy. Nobody wants to hear it. We've got to deal with it. And Canada, to me, has a can-do attitude that can step into that place. Now, what do you want to do more of is another interesting question, because it's stepping into what you're good at. And again, encouragement. Now, I know I'm an academic, or at least I have become one in the second half of my life. And everybody knows academics have no idea what they're talking about, because all we do is read books. So I want you to test this. I want you to take this research that I've done and go home tonight and test it and see whether it works for you. I want you to go home tonight and say to your partner, "You're really good in bed, but." And then give them a list of criteria that need improvement. Or, "You're really good in bed, and this is what I love about what you do, what I want you to do more of." And then I want you to evaluate the difference in performance. Right? The same thing is in the workplace. If I focus on what you're bad at, I'm not focusing on what you're good at. And one thing we also know from that research is that you can't be world class at something you don't love. You can be really good, you can make a ton of money, and you can be absolutely miserable and hate your job. And is that what you want to bring into some of the best palliative care in the world? And asking that question, if only. If I had only thought, if I'd only tried. Because for our companies to step into a new way of being, it also means we have to step into that new way of being as well. So looking at just business, business can't just focus on business anymore. If you're looking for new employees in your organization, you need to look at students who have a business degree and not just business. Business and anthropology, business and psychology. Change is a psychological event. It is not a business event. If you want to transform something, you have to work with psyche. You have to work with what feeds you. So when your soul is starving, what feeds you? Can you go back to that and then step into it? So if we were going to do that, if we actually stepped into our own passion, which we've talked a lot about today, what would be the result? Teilhard de Chardin is a Christian mystic who said that we've conquered the energy of the wind and the waves, but one day we will conquer the energy of love, of passion. And then for the second time in the history of our race, we will discover fire. If we did that now, if you found your creative core, stepped into it, and our organizations did, we can heal our economy and heal the planet. So my wish for you is that you find that, you step into it, and start a journey that has always been meant just for you. Thank you.